constitutional scholars and historians and thought leaders from diverse perspectives to teach the basic principles of the Constitution, from liberty, equality, and democracy of the Declaration of Independence, federalism, separation of powers, and the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. I've just gone on to the course and started working my way through, and it's thrilling to see the depth and rigor and accessibility and the fact that it's all going to be free and online for the world. I'm here at the NCC today. It's a really exciting day. Justice Neil Gorsuch is here. He's seen the course and is as excited as we are. He's our honorary co-chair along with Justice Breyer. And I'm also here with Jeff and Janine Yass. And Jeff and Janine made possible this great collaboration. And it was their vision to bring Sal Khan and the NCC together. And I'm just so grateful to them for making dreams come true. This is going to transform civic education for millions of Americans. We're here so eager to talk with Sal and to show you the course. And we're honored to be joined by Amy Elsass. She's one of our star teachers on the Teacher Advisory Council at the National Constitution Center. She's here with me in Philadelphia. And Amy, so grateful to you for moderating the conversation.
Well, thank you. My name's Amy Elsass. I'm a high school government teacher in Miamisburg, Ohio. I have had the privilege of piloting the Khan 101 Academy, the partnership between the two, and I have to say that it's an amazing resource that is easy to use, and it's a privilege for me to be here. So I have a couple of questions for you that I'd like to present. The first one is, why did Khan Academy and the National Constitution Center collaborate to create the Constitution 101 course?
Should I start?
Please do so.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Amy. Thanks, Jeff. And thanks to the Yasses. This wouldn't have been possible, just as Jeff mentioned. And I always get excited about the Constitution Center, but even more when I see how excited Jeff gets about the Constitution. So big picture, a lot of folks know Khan Academy, nonprofit mission, free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And we've always wanted to have all of the core academic material from pre-K through the core of college. And a lot of people know us for math and science, but for me and for our entire team, it's much more than me. The humanities, and especially civic engagement and civics, has always had a special place in our heart. And so as more states want to really drive positive civic dialogue, at the same time, the Constitution Center has created amazing materials over the years around the Constitution. And at the end of the day, a course in civics in the United States, and probably most of the world, should be anchored in the Constitution. And so Jeff and I and several of our team members had this dream that what if we could create an amazing online course leveraging everything that the National Constitution Center brings to the table, and can show the world that there's a way to have civic dialogue that's truly civil. A lot of folks are afraid these days of engaging in this because they think they might offend someone, or they think that their views might be too far this way or too far that way. But Jeff and I felt, and thank God the Yasses also felt, that there is a way to do this. And the way to do this isn't to shy away from differences of opinion, but to bring many differences of opinion to the table. So what I think is very interesting about this course, that's different than I think any other course on, quote, civics that has existed before, other than it being anchored in the Constitution and very deep and having mastery-based practice, you see viewpoints from many first-person actors, from politicians, celebrities, everyday people who might not agree, but can give a view on the Constitution that gives us all a bigger picture. But we're super excited we were able to do this.
Sal, you express it so well. It's so exciting to hear you identify that phenomenal feature of bringing together the greatest scholars of different points of view, from Carolyn Winterer and Gordon Wood on the American Revolution to Alberto Gonzalez, Francis Ford Coppola. It's so meaningful to have them explore areas of agreement and disagreement. And why did we do the course? Sal Khan is the greatest educational visionary in America, and he's transformed learning about math and sciences. And to have the chance to teach the Constitution with Sal and bring all this light and learning to millions of students is literally the dream of a lifetime. And then imagine how exciting it was to get the benefit of his vision on questions like AI, which we've incorporated into the class by having a Conmigo tutor that teachers can use to draft lesson plans and to get the best of the wisdom, and then to do the interactive questions. And I just took them for the first time yesterday to see the launch, and they're rigorous, they're tough. I had to think hard, and to imagine engaging millions of students, not just high school students, but adult learners too, with these questions. I really think that we have a chance to transform civics. I've just come this morning from a new naturalization ceremony. There's out of all the phenomenal things that I have the honor of doing, nothing more moving than a naturalization ceremony for new citizens. 27 countries, 48 new citizens standing up and reciting their countries. Saul, when you and I first talked about why we were so excited about the course, you talked about interviewing immigrants about what America means to them, because we both know as children of immigrants that immigrants understand the American idea and care about it more than anyone. And I was incredibly moved, as I always am, by hearing the new citizens, and we've captured their stories in this course as well. Imagine taking the excitement that those new citizens express in their ceremonies and bringing that to learners of all ages. High school students in this course, I know we're looking forward to working together to do a middle school version down the line. And then for adult learners too, it's just incredibly exciting. So that's why we're here.
Tell me about the Constitution 101 course. What is the content and who are the professors?
So we touched on it a bit. The content, it really is anchored off of the National Constitution Center's Constitution 101 course. So that was the anchor there. And then, as Jeff mentioned, we then added mastery-based exercise. When we say mastery-based exercises, that means that if it's not a shallow item bank where you just do 3 questions and you're kind of done, you have no more. There's a deep item bank where if you want to keep practicing and ensure that you can fill in that gap and master that concept or that skill, you can. And a lot of folks associate us with videos, although I often associate it with the practice. But when we thought about videos like this, especially if you're doing something in civics, we could do our classic Khan Academy chalk talk style, but we realized that something like civics is that much more powerful to have all of the different types of figures that we just mentioned. So a lot of top scholars, not all of whom agree with each other, which I think it's really powerful. I remember the textbooks when I took civics in high school. You didn't see the disagreement. You just got kind of one story, and that made it less interesting. The disagreement's part of what makes a democracy really vibrant, reasonable disagreement. And so you see that in the course, which I don't think you see in any other course, with actual videos of these folks, of politicians, of celebrities, of everyday Americans, of new citizens, new immigrants. So I think when folks take a look at it, it's pretty infectious from the energy and the interest that these people have in the topic.
So true. I'm just scrolling through it now, and I just get excited looking at the units. So civil dialogue is the first. How to interpret the Constitution, teaching the principles of constitutional interpretation to high school students. Then the principles of the American Revolution, the ideas and events that led to change. The road to reform, the Constitutional Convention and battle for ratification. The Bill of Rights, separation of powers and federalism. The 3 branches of government. Slavery, the Civil War, emancipation and Reconstruction. The 14th Amendment, citizenship, freedom, and equality. Elections and voting rights from the founding through the civil rights movement, and more. I won't run through all the units, but it's just extraordinary. And then I just want to give you a sense of the richness of it. For principles of the American Revolution, we begin with the Declaration of Independence. We have background, primary source documents, questions like, how does the American idea unite us? And that's an amazing video by Gordon Wood, the founder of American history, and talking about the basic principles. And then we have classical and Enlightenment thinkers. What did the founders learn from Aristotle, from Cicero, from the Tusculan Disputations? I have to share my excitement here. I've just written this book about the pursuit of happiness, how classical writers on virtue inspired the lives of the founders and defined America. And it turns out the book that turned Franklin and Jefferson onto the idea of happiness as being good and not feeling good was this book by Cicero, the Tusculan Disputations. And we've got it here online. It's just so cool that we can offer this up to the whole country to learn about, as well as John Locke and Algernon Sidney, the founders who Jefferson said inspired the American idea. Then we have social contract theory and the divine right of kings. The primary source there is the New Hampshire Bill of Rights, which was so crucial in defining alienable and unalienable rights. Remember, an alienable right is one I can surrender to the government in exchange for greater security and safety. And unalienable rights, like freedom of conscience and thought, I can't surrender because they're based on reason, and that's inherent in who I am. And then this mastery quiz, which I told you I took yesterday, and I barely got through, but it was tough, and it just makes you think. And then, like a Ginsu knife salesman, there's more. This is just this one unit. Principles of the American Revolution, natural rights, popular sovereignty, and the rule of law. A whole bunch of questions. What did natural rights mean? Why were they important? This is so cool. We have Theophilus Parsons, the Essex result. I know this is going to seem like nerding out, but when I was in law school, I always wondered, what's the exact definition of an alienable and unalienable right? It turns out it was this guy, Theophilus Parsons, a high Federalist from New England. And here it is online. You can read the source. What's popular sovereignty? What's the rule of law? The primary source document there is Abraham Lincoln's Lyceum address. This is where he's telling the Springfield Lyceum to beware mob violence. Abolitionist newspaper editors are being murdered, and he denounces King Mob, referring to Andrew Jackson. And it's his call on America. He's a young representative to embrace the Constitution and the rule of law as the alternative to violence. It's crucial. And then what does the Constitution mean today? I have to stop because I don't want to go on too long, but there's more. The principles of the revolution: equality, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The reasons for the revolution, another mastery quiz, and then a unit test which you can collect. That's just one out of the 9 units in this class. What an amazing resource! I mean, it's what a gift. It's deep, but it's also really accessible. Kids of all levels can engage with it. I am so excited by this great course.
Well, thank you. Why do you use technology to support learning about civics, the Constitution, and more?
Saul, you're the master.
All right. Well, this goes back to the mission of Khan Academy. When it was just me many years ago, I remember, many people know it started as a tutoring project with my cousins. I already had a day job back then as an analyst at a hedge fund. One thing led to another. My family finds out free tutoring is going on. I'm tutoring a bunch of cousins. And just as a side family project, I start seeing that they had gaps in their learning. And so I started writing software before I made the first video to help my cousins practice, to help fill in those gaps. And then I started making the videos. And in 2008, when I filled out the paperwork to be a nonprofit, I remember where they give you the mission statement, I filled out free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And that is probably, in most of history, a delusional statement for someone operating out of a walk-in closet to write down as something that they think is doable. But we were, even in 2008, we were in a moment, and I think that moment is accelerating, where technology, obviously we've had technology in the past, like writing and the printing press. But now we have technology that can distribute information at a scale that we never thought possible with fairly low marginal cost. It obviously takes resources to build it. So when I talk about, or we talk about free anyone, anywhere, that's what the internet allows us to do at a relatively low cost, distribute to many, many folks. And world-class, that's mastery learning, that's personalization. If you need to fill in one gap, you can jump into this course and get it. But if you want to learn about the Constitution and civics at a truly world-class level, you can go through this course. And I would say not just be college ready. I think you could walk into graduate seminars and hold your own once you do this course. You will not be intimidated by anyone when you talk about civics. That's the goal. And the way we think about it at Khan Academy is for those who don't have access to resources, we want to raise the floor. So if you're in a rural part of the world or don't have access to a school, now with the cell phone, you can access world-class learning about civics. But if you go to a great school, hopefully you do, and you have an amazing teacher like yourself, Amy, like, this is where we hope we can raise the ceiling, where you as the teacher now have access to essentially the world's top scholars to come into your classroom and help teach your students or help support your students in a personalized way. I want to be very clear. In no way does this minimize the role of the teacher. One thing that we've always thought at Khan Academy, if I had to pick between amazing teacher and amazing technology, I would pick the amazing teacher every time. But luckily, we don't have to make that trade-off. So when I imagine an amazing teacher like you and being able to use these resources to allow students to have real, see first person some of the great thinkers of these ideas, it potentially even engage with the AI to have follow-on questions, the teachers be able to use the AI tools, and the AI tools are free for all teachers in the United States to help develop lesson plans around it, to do in-class dialogues, et cetera, prompts, and potentially do it in a mastery and personalized way. It's very exciting. Hopefully we're going to be able to do both. And, a little part of me thinks that people in other countries will also use this to help stimulate their democracies as well.
Gosh, that would be so amazing, Saul. Imagine bringing all this light and learning to countries around the world, as well as teachers and students across America. And Saul speaks so powerfully about connecting great scholars with great teachers, and then connecting these great materials with students at a scale previously unimagined. It's just so exciting to think about the numbers of students we can reach. We were blown away to find that the Interactive Constitution, which the National Constitution Center launched in 2015, within years of its launch, it's now getting 90 million unique hits, and it's among the most Googled constitutions in the world. And now we have the possibility to take all this great learning on Constitution 101 and connect to millions of students in both classrooms and also outside the classrooms, in homes and communities across America. So the technology allows distribution on a level previously unimagined. It also just is so exciting to think that all the books in the world are now free and online. When I was a kid, I went to the Library of Congress building in Washington, D.C. I still think the Thomas Jefferson building is the most inspiring building in D.C. out of all those great buildings. And I remember saying to my mom, and I was, around 5 or something, how exciting it was that all the books in the world were in that building. And now they're just at our fingertips. They're free and online. And the fact that we're able to link to the primary source documents and help curate them so that students across the world can read them makes it a really glorious time to be alive and to be a teacher. But there's one other important thing that Saul said. The technology is no substitute for teaching, and it's also no substitute for deep reading. And all the books in the world are online, and now this amazing course is available to all for free. But it's urgently important that citizens and students take the time to actually read the texts and to dig in and learn for themselves. And you've got to have the focus and the discipline to actually click on those links, read the documents, and make up your own mind. We've made it as accessible as possible. We have the greatest teachers in the world who can be guides to the document, but in the end, nothing will be a substitute for that individual learner whose interest is sparked by the excitement of learning about history and the Constitution and wants to dig in and learn more.
I think this is a very fitting question since it's National Constitution Day, but why does a document written in 1787 matter to me today?
I guess we'll keep taking turns.
Really?
This is I'll get a little science fiction-y on us. One of my favorite book series is the Foundation series, Isaac Asimov, and in it you have this academic 30,000 years in the future who's about to see the galaxies. He's able to predict using his statistics. It's called psychohistory, that the empire is about to go into a 10,000 year dark age, and he decides to do something about it. And the thing he does not try to preserve the physical structures. He doesn't try to preserve the guns or the military weapons. He takes the knowledge of the empire and preserves it in the periphery of the galaxy to shorten the Dark Ages. And I first read that when I was in middle school. And it was the first time that it really dawned on me that the strength of a civilization is not marble pillars and guns and tanks and even wealth. It's really what's going on in people's minds. And what's really powerful about the Constitution is it is written down form of kind of our collective values and our collective beliefs that literally constitute what we are as a country. It took me a long time. I mean, it's literally right there in the word Constitution. But for most of my life, I would just read, a constitution is like a document that they use to help set up a government in some way. I think I was in my 20s. I'm a little embarrassed to admit it. But I'm like, wait, it actually has the word constitute. Wait, it actually constitutes the country. It actually defines what the country is. There is no country. There is without a constitution to constitute it. So you take that, seemingly, something written on paper. What the power is the ideas that's in our collective minds. Hopefully we can preserve the paper, but even if that were to go away, what's going on in our collective minds is what's going to continue to constitute what makes this country special, and hopefully many other countries over time.
So that was amazing. What an incredible answer. And of course, we asked a version of that question to all of our scholars. Why is the Constitution important and why should we study its ideals? And the answers are just thrilling. And everyone's got a different answer, but they're just so provocative. And I love what you said about how it's all about what's in our mind, which echoes the wisdom of the Dhammapada. We are what we think, life shaped by the mind, which echoes the wisdom of the Upanishads. We should strive not to control the thoughts and actions of others, but only our own thoughts and emotions. And that's what Cicero read in the Tusculan Disputations when he talked about using our powers of reason to moderate or modulate our unreasonable passions and emotions. And then John Adams saw the connections between the Bhagavad Gita and Pythagoras. Just the level of reading was incredible, and summed it all up in the idea that, as he put it, personal self-government is necessary for political self-government. In other words, unless as individuals we can master our own unreasonable passions and emotions and achieve the moderation and calm tranquility that's necessary for personal happiness, we'll never achieve public happiness as citizens. And that's why we see the connection between striving to create a balance in the constitution of our minds and that of the constitution of the state, which is a connection that Madison himself drew in the Federalist Papers and said that just as the human mind is composed of reason, passion, and desire, so the Constitution should mirror those different faculties and achieve a balance. I learned all this just from reading this great moral philosophy and over the COVID for the Pursuit of Happiness book. But it's incredible how it all fits together, and it's an example of how the more history you learn, the more unity and harmony you find. There's so much more to learn and grow every day. But just even the summary that I just shared with you changed my conception of both how to be a good person and how to be a good citizen. It's helped me in my own quest for the pursuit of happiness, and also helps me teach the Constitution for why it's important to find that moderation. So that's my answer for why it's important to study the Constitution.
Wonderful. So how can I have conversations about controversial issues with friends who don't always agree?
I guess since we're taking turns, I'll take that one. That one's not always the easiest one. Well, I mean, the first thing is, I do pick the conversations. I'm like, is this going to be a constructive conversation or not? So, sometimes, and I'm very guilty of this. I care deeply about certain things, and I want to share my convictions or maybe convince other people. But sometimes, and this, I guess this mirrors a little bit of what Jeff was just saying. I try to say like, okay, is this going to be constructive for me to bring this up right now? So that's the first one. But generally speaking, I don't think we should shy away from conversations, even if they can be. In fact, the difficult conversations in our life, whether it's political or personal, are often the most constructive ones, as long as they're done with care. And I would say, this is one of these things, once again, public life mirroring personal life. If you can enter into this conversation with true curiosity, true listening, try to put your ego aside, try to not, and hope that the person you're conversing with is trying to do similar things, then you can have a very strong conversation with people who are maybe even diametrically opposite in their point of view. Just as a little bit of a side, there's a sister nonprofit we have called Schoolhouse.world that's around tutoring, but we're starting a whole project around dialogues that folks can have with each other and in a constructive way. But yeah, by doing, that's the only way that you're going to slowly make things progress. On the other hand, if you're very anchored to your position, if you're just trying to put in the next word and convince people, then even people who you not agree with 95%, it can turn into a shouting match. So yes, I'd say in all discussions that are sensitive, try to be in listening mode, try to state your point of view with respect, and try to check your ego at the door.
Beautifully put. That exactly sums up the wisdom of Ben Franklin at the Constitutional Convention when he said, this isn't perfect. We all may disagree about it, but it's as perfect as we're going to get. And let's have the humility to set aside our ego and converge around the common good. And this is a crucial contribution of the Constitution 101 course. The very first unit is why have a civil dialogue. And it includes Justice Stephen Breyer on civil dialogue at the Supreme Court and why it's important for him to listen to differing point of views, a background on constitutional conversation, what the rules and norms are. And we encourage students to focus on constitutional rather than political discussions, asking not what they think the government should do, but what the Constitution allows and forbids it to do. And by viewing everything through that constitutional lens, you open up the possibility that you might embrace a policy position, but think the Constitution forbids it, or you might really want the government to do something, but or think that the government shouldn't do something, but the Constitution allows it. That lawyer's lens turns out to be a great way of turning down the heat and allowing people to discuss even the most controversial issues, from guns and abortion and voting rights, by thinking like constitutional lawyers, listening to the arguments on both sides before they make up their own minds, being open to the possibility of changing their minds, and debating issues in constitutional terms. Other aspects of the unit include George Washington's farewell address, where he literally ends up by saying, "Citizens of America, I'm worried that we're degenerating into factions and mobs, and only listening to each other respectfully and learning the habits of civil dialogue at what he imagined as a national university that would bring together students from across the country to set aside their partisan and parochial and local differences so they could do two things: learn substantive principles of liberty and learn the habits of civil dialogue." And Saul, I have to believe that we are fulfilling George Washington's mission and hope. With this course, this is exactly what he had in mind at the scale that he hoped for. And then we also have Thomas Jefferson's first inaugural address. We're all Republicans, we're all Federalists. Now, united by our love of the Constitution. Why is it important to avoid cynicism? Why should young people learn about the Constitution? And Federalist One, which says that the whole point of the American government is to test the proposition, can we create a government based on reason and conviction, not force or violence? We can't do that unless we're guided by reason rather than force and listening to competing points of view. So that's why it's really important to learn how to have a civil dialogue. And there's no better place to learn how to have a civil dialogue than Constitution 101.
So now on to AI. How does AI and Conmingo support this course?
Yeah, so for those of who haven't heard what Conmigo is, a couple of almost exactly 2 years ago, OpenAI reaches out to us. This was months before ChatGPT comes out, and when we saw what would have become GPT-4, which was more advanced than even the first version of ChatGPT, it was clear that this could have huge implications. A lot of what Khan Academy, Jeff mentions Aristotle. Aristotle was Alexander the Great's tutor. And so when you imagine what world-class education is, you imagine that dialogue between the master and the student going back and forth. And many folks know Aristotle's mentor was Plato. Plato's mentor was Socrates. So there's a great tradition of mentors and students. Now, when we introduced as a society mass public education about 300 years ago, which was a hugely utopian idea. For most of human history, there was no such thing as mass public education. It's done incredibly positive things. If you think at literacy rates or just, I mean, there was a time that algebra was considered something that only, the most specialized scholars would learn. Now we expect everyone to learn. So really, really positive things have happened. But we had to make trade-offs. We had to move everyone through kind of a set syllabus. You as a teacher know that in a classroom of 25, 30, 35 students, some students are ready to race ahead. Some students need a little bit more support. And it's not always the same student. Sometimes it's one concept versus another, but it's hard to address that. Now, the gold standard has always been, well, what if you could get a lower student to teacher ratio? Or what if you could get a personal tutor? That's what I was able to do a little bit for my cousins. But society doesn't have the resources for that. And so we at Khan Academy, when we say world-class education, we're like, okay, can we support a classroom? Can we support the individual by approximating some elements with videos and exercises? But it was pretty clear that AI, once again, it's not going to in any way replace a human being, et cetera. But when a student has a question at 11 p.m. About alienable versus unalienable rights, they can get into a conversation about it. They can test ideas about what about this right? What about that right? Can I really give that up to the government, et cetera, et cetera? Now that's possible with AI. And AI has a lot of rough spots, and we've been working on all of that. But Khanmigo is now the AI on Khan Academy that can act as a tutor for any student and can act as a teaching assistant for any teacher, helps teachers create lesson plans, progress reports, refresh their own knowledge, ask any questions that they have, create quizzes, etc. The teacher tools are free to the world. The student tools, many folks know, obviously our mission is free world-class education. This course is completely free. The teacher tools are completely free. And we're figuring out ways in partnership with districts to give this out to as many students as possible. Right now, we're pushing on the order of about 400,000 or 500,000 students are already using this in the classroom. And I hope we can talk about millions in the not too far future.
Gosh, those numbers are so exciting. And it's so exciting to learn from Sal about the possibilities for AI. He's the great prophet and visionary of how this technology can be put to good use. And he's always insisted on guardrails and mobilizing and harnessing its power. And just seeing the use of Khanmigo for teachers on Constitution 101, it's all, as he said, helps teachers do lesson plans and assessments. It's focused on the content that we put in, so it's reliable and accurate. And the idea of working with districts to then use AI to encourage adoption is just mind-blowing. So going in with full awareness of the challenges and the need for guardrails, it's really exciting to be working with Sal to help bring this technology as broadly as possible.
So how can adult learners and learners of all ages adopt Constitution 101 in their communities?
Sal, first to you.
They could just, if they search Constitution 101, Khan Academy, they'll find the course. And obviously you can also go to Khan Academy and do the drop down and yeah, you could jump in and just something that's of interest to you, jump in immediately. And I actually think it would be fun watching, over dinner or thing like that. If you're, and then if you want to do the quizzes, et cetera, it's good fodder for dinner time conversation with your kids. But whatever it might be, and Jeff's right. Like, there's huge industries in the media right now about almost working us up, and they're analyzing the civic realm through the lens of oftentimes trying to work us up. And any of these things that we are sometimes fixated on in the news, et cetera, if you take that constitutional lens and if you look at that course, one, it'll reduce the heat, increase the light, but also it'll give you a point of view that in some ways is more firm than just going off of what talking heads are telling you should believe. But yeah, that's the fun of this course. It's not like someone has to register for it. It can be used in a formal environment, but people can search, jump in, get what they want, use it piecemeal to answer a question.
It's so true that it can increase the light and turn down the heat. One of the most inspiring events I had this summer I've been going around talking about the Pursuit of Happiness book. A guy in Elkhart, Indiana, convinced 1,000 retirees over 50 to sign up for a lifelong learning group in his local church. And he brought 500 of them together. And we talked about the pursuit of happiness and founding ideals in the Constitution. And then those members of that group took the Constitution 101 class that the NCC has online for 15 weeks. And then I zoomed in with the class to discuss. My dream, and I know we're going to achieve it because dreams can come true, is for adult communities across America to convene, to host these discussion groups, and then to use the new Khan Academy NCC Constitution 101 class as a basis for their lifelong learning. It's incredibly meaningful. It is a way of learning and growing when you're over 50 and a retiree. It helps rise above politics, as Saul said. And the course is totally great for adult learners. I can now attest, having taken it. So, you know, it's almost we're working with other partners to inspire people to convene these groups across the country. But what a great project as part of the celebrations leading up to America's 250 and beyond in 2026, to have not just high school students, but adult learners and learners of all ages using Constitution 101 to learn about the Constitution.
All right, so the last question is, how does the new Constitution 101 course make complex constitutional concepts accessible to high school students?
Well, I think the first part is, so many things that feel really dense when you read them in a textbook, or even feel dense if you're in a college class or a law school class, if someone's just lecturing at you. They become really interesting when you're around people speaking in a conversational manner. And we, I think, succeeded in capturing that, where we're going to some of the top scholars and other notable figures and everyday people, but we're talking the style that you hear them, it really sounds like someone like your friend that you're talking at a dinner table, which I think makes it much easier to connect with the content, even though you're talking about some pretty deep concepts. So what I've seen is high school students really appreciate in some ways, much deeper level that you get than you would get with the traditional textbook or things like that. But also it's very, very conversational. And as we said before, you get multiple points of view. And I think that also helps reinforce when you hear, two very smart people give you, in some ways, diametrically opposite points of view. I think it really sticks. And sometimes they agree on a few things, and those will really stick. But you can, it makes the whole thing more nuanced and more interesting. And I think any high school student will get a lot of fun out of it.
That's such a crucial insight. It's in a conversational voice, like you're hearing it over dinner. I spent 20 years as a journalist, and the best writing advice I ever got was from an editor at the New Yorker who said, write it like you're telling it to someone over dinner. And that transformed the way I wrote, and it helps you connect. Only connect is the crucial wisdom of journalism and teaching. And that's exactly what this course does. And it combines these really conversational videos that don't dumb stuff down. It lifts us up by making it even more exciting. I mean, hearing Gordon Wood tell dramatic stories about how the founders were risking their lives and showing the courage to be in danger of hanging during the revolution is phenomenal, and it draws you in. And then you're moved to read the primary source documents. So we follow up the video about how the Anti-Federalists influenced the creation of the Bill of Rights with a brief about the founding story of the Bill of Rights and Madison's battle to achieve it. And then you read the primary source, Jefferson's correspondence about why a Bill of Rights was necessary. That's what I really just find so mind-blowing about this course. The combining of the accessibility and the conversational style, which sparks curiosity, and then invites you to come in and dig deep. And deep is the deeper you get, the more exciting it gets, but always in the context of drawing people in. It's just marvelous. Saul, what a great day. What a great Constitution Day. Jeff and Janine are here. I'm looking at them because they're sitting on the couch. And I just want to say thank you in person again for making this possible. What an amazing amount of light you've given to America. Thank you. Thank you. Happy Constitution Day.
So that wraps up the questions that I have for you. Is there anything you'd like to add before we go?
I'll just say it's been a real privilege working with Jeff, Janine, and Jeff, both Jeffs. Um, I, my whole life, I'm always like, "Hey, Sal, are you thinking a little bit too megalomaniacal, or are you thinking a little bit too big?" And I was like, "No, well, if someone doesn't, what's like, you need to have to at least swing for the fences. We live once." And I think, this group that, I sometimes joke that, there's so many things that have worked together to allow Khan Academy to exist and do what it does, that I joke with our team that benevolent aliens are using us to prepare humanity for first contact. And the Yasses and Jeff and the National Constitution Center and Khan Academy all coming together, is, I think, more evidence that the benevolent aliens are there. And a lot of times, people have heard that it's darkest before the dawn, et cetera, et cetera. And it's easy for especially young people to get very cynical and to get very down on their government, because politics can get not so pleasant a lot of the times. People are saying unpleasant things about each other. Half the country versus half the country, it sometimes feels. But one, I remind folks that the arc of history is a very, very positive one. We are in an amazing country. We talked about this, having voices of new citizens and immigrants. Some of this I think was inspired. I told Jeff the story of my wife, who immigrated to the U.S. when she was 12 years old from Pakistan, and her college essays were about how American kids don't realize what they have, and the rights that they have, and the privileges that they have, and the resources that they have access to. And that's not to say that we don't have a lot of things to fix in this country and that everything's perfect, but there's a lot that we can be grateful for. And I think this course will hopefully show that, and hopefully, in a time where students oftentimes feel cynical about the future, hopefully give them some pride in what we're doing, but realize that there's a lot of work to do to make us a more perfect union. And a lot of times in AI, I've been telling people, look, technology only amplifies human intent. Bad actors are going to use things like AI to do negative intent. Whether or not AI is a net positive in the world depends on whether positive people are going to use it to amplify their positive intent more than the negative people. I think the same thing is true of our democracy. In some ways, democracy is a technology. It's a tool. And if good people become cynical and they don't participate, then you're going to cede it to others who might not be as good. So hopefully this will be invigorating for a whole new generation to keep our democracy going strong and vibrant.
That's so beautifully said, Saul. And it's so inspiring that you recalled Umema's idea that it's so important for us, especially children of immigrants, to learn about American ideals so that we can defend them. And benevolent aliens or benevolent friends like the Yasses or some higher force did bring us together. And I think I want to end by being inspired by your vision of thinking as big as possible. And the sky is the limit and the world is all before us. And now we've shown that we can create this content in this accessible, meaningful, deep, and exciting form. And we're going to work together to bring it to high schools and to teachers and to high school age students. And then let's together learn from our pilot and bring this great Constitution 101 class to learners of all ages. Let's create a middle school version, and then let's take it to adults. And I really am inspired, and I'd love to do this within the next 2 years in time for 2026. Imagine citizens across the country convening reading groups, taking the course, discussing it with each other. We can go on the road and meet them where they are, and taking the same devotion to reason and to the principles of the Declaration and the Constitution to their communities. The founders thought this was necessary to save the Republic, that the experiment would not work unless citizens learned about the principles of liberty and also the habits of civil dialogue. And we're now testing that proposition. And if anything can really inspire that kind of learning, both about the principles and the habits, it's this Constitution 101 class. So we've got a lot of work to do together, and together all of us can transform civic education and keep the republic. Can't wait to do it with you.
Well, thank you both for joining us, and I hope that everyone out there takes away what a wonderful program this is and is able to incorporate it into their classrooms.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks to all. Happy Constitution Day.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Constitution Day.
Bye.